back right here, WPAT, Ralph Romeo with you. What do you know? What do you know with the magic of the internet? And incidentally, Dennis, you know, if it wasn't for my wife, I'd never have your picture right here because two cans in a string is what I'm used to. because man, when I try to delve into the modern technology, I get really screwed up. But thank goodness for Cindy in there. Dennis Tufano. Am I pronouncing it correctly the way you like it?
Tufano.
Yes. And, this is a guy, and again, I'm a little younger than you, so you won't get aggravated with me. And by the way, Jimmy Petrecca Productions, my good friend Jim hooked me up with Dennis. He doesn't know me from Adam. He just knows Jim, and he trusts Jim, and he figures I'm a good guy. He's right. And Dennis has as a young guy, I used to listen to his stuff all the time, never knowing that many years later, I'd be able to talk to him via this little box I have here called the Zoom connection. It's a beautiful thing. Dennis, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks, man. Thanks. I have the same problem. I think that modern technology is an oxymoron.
There's nothing modern about it at all. Let's get the two cans.
No, it's like we're better off with charcoal and a piece of paper, I think.
Well, think about how it's changed society drastically, where no one talks to each other anymore.
I know.
Everybody's head is in that phone all times, and never any conversation.
Yeah. People defy, the fates by crossing the street while looking at their phone. It's like what happened to look both ways. I don't know what happened with that one, but maybe it's the way they cull the herd, Maybe that's the way they do it.
They get rid of a few undesirables.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it that way, I guess. But no, because I'm walking down the street in New York, in the city, and everybody with their head, you can't see this, folks, but I have my head in my hand, like imitating that there's mimicking a phone here. And this is the way they go about their business throughout the whole day.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, on one hand, it's a blessing for certain informational situations. And then sometimes it just takes over and everybody becomes part of the machine. And I think that's a departure. I mean, when we were growing up, we had little AM radios that we used to hold up to our ears with a little antenna trying to catch that station in Little Rock so we could hear the Sherry by the Four Seasons. It was like, and that was the technology we had. And now it's like now they stream movies and they watch them on little bitty things like this. And I go, whatever, we just got big TVs and now they want us to use our little phones. It's a funny planet, basically. I've enjoyed it many years now.
Me too. And the one thing you say about, it does serve as a transistor to a certain extent. For instance, if you want to listen in California to my show in New York, I'm not syndicated. You'd have to have the phone and listen through the internet.
Right. Well, that's the connection we all have now. But just imagine that morning you wake up and the screen doesn't come on and the phone doesn't ring. And they tell you that the grid was shut down. Electric cars, all of our informational devices, we're going to be stuck. And people will panic. It happened about 10, 12 years ago or something like that, where beepers, remember beepers? Everybody had beepers.
The beepers and mostly first,
lawyers, and lawyers and doctors mostly used them. And one night the satellite went out and everybody freaked out and all the doctors were not getting their messages. They couldn't help people. They couldn't do anything just because the satellite went out. So I always kind of keep the old two cans in a string available just in case, And
a few batteries. You got to have the batteries.
Yeah, you got to have batteries. Yeah.
You never know with the batteries. But all right, let's get back to business here. Now, your start, I think Chicago is where your birthplace. Yes.
Yes.
And what was it like growing up in Chicago back in the old days there?
Well, it was great. Chicago was a great city. It's still a great city. It has gone through its changes throughout the years. But back in the 60s, it was there seemed to be hope in the music business there. There was like a I don't know, some sort of vortex, and because all of a sudden Chicago was known for jazz and blues for a long time, has a great history of that. And that's what we used to go see. We used to go to little clubs and see great blues players and some jazz people and stuff. The Rush Street in Chicago was the place to go, and it was just happened. People started forming bands. You know, I mean, of course, the Beatles lit the flame. I'm sure, because then everybody wanted to have a band that you had singers that were in the band. Because a lot of before that, we used to just go watch instrumental groups, and once in a while they'd have a guest singer or something like that. But so it was very exciting. It started to get really palpable there that we were going to go someplace with this. You know, even though we were doing it because we were able to, and we had no idea that we were going to make records. We just enjoyed quitting our day jobs and going out and playing gigs on the weekends, and it started to get pretty regular. So we committed to that, and sure enough, you know, things started going. But for some reason, people started just picking up on the band. Something about the band was there because back then we all played covers. We all did what we were supposed to do, and but there was a point where we were playing a lot of ballrooms back then, and people stopped dancing and started standing in front of the stage and watching us. And the DJs at these places used to go, wait a second, something's going on here. Why are they watching the band instead of dancing to the band? And so he came to us and said, you know, you guys should make a record. And we started in that.
So that was the initial. So now, when you said he came to you and said that, who are you referring to?
He was a disc jockey who played in between our sets.
I see.
He spun the records, and his name was Carl Bonifetti. He actually became kind of like our temporary manager, and you know, he's the one that went, oh my God, there's something going on here. So he bought us the same suits, you know, we could wear. He just tried to start grooming us. And it paid off. I mean, it's just something clicked, and we just kept at it. But then there was about 6 or 7 Chicago groups that started blossoming too, which we never had a pop influence in Chicago. So it really started to work pretty well.
Was there a competitive thing going on between the groups that actually made you better, perhaps?
Oh yeah, there was a little bit of competition. You know, like. Especially when you first charted, like in the local station. You know, we had WLS radio back there with some great DJs, you know, Dick Biondi being one of the top ones. And he broke all the bands. He just broke all the rules and played records so people could hear them, you know, and be aware of the new music. But we were competitive. But it was competitive in a nice way. I mean, you know, there was always battle of the bands, but now it was the bar went up a little higher because now we knew that maybe we could jump to recording, and so there was a whole other kind of feeling in the city about that, which I find really interesting now because a couple of years back we did a benefit for our late keyboard player Marty Greb. And my idea was to bring everybody back to Chicago, all the bands that had records. There was about 8 bands. And for the first time in the history of all of us, we all played together on the same show. And it was a sellout, of course. It was great having it be a benefit. But, yeah, everybody said we've never seen all the groups in Chicago together ever. And that was amazing to sit back at, especially now that we're silverbacks, you know, we're kind of like looking at them and going, wow. We look at each other and say, remember when we were just snotty little kids and we hated the fact that you were playing with us? And now we're all together and we all have our history, you know. And it really worked out really well. Chicago definitely supported the music back then.
What was your springboard? What would you say was maybe the turning point is a better word?
Well, a real good one was there was a battle of the bands, for WGN TV. They had a local show. It was called All Time Hits, and they had, like, 7 or 8 different genres of music: Broadway music, standards. They had different singers: Billy Williams, who did "I'm Going to Sit Right Down and Write Myself a Letter." Oh yeah.
That's
And he
great.
was on the show, and then there was, other people. But we won the battle of bands to be the rock portion of the show, and we were called the Pulsations at the time. And so in rehearsals for the show, it was like 14 episodes of the show. So it was a good deal. And that station went out to like 5, 6 states. So it was a really good thing to keep your job on that, and when they offered it. And it was very odd because live music back then was very hard to do, because the technology was just, it was built for speakers, not for music, So we went in and they asked us, they said, look, do you think that because of the British invasion, this was 65 that this happened, would you consider changing your name to sound a little bit more English, just, because of that? Because that's what's eating up all the airwaves right now. And we said, well, we'll think about it. We're just a local band. The name is not branded anywhere yet. So the next day we came to rehearsal, and a security guard, a young guy, came up to us who had suspiciously long hair for 1965. And he handed us a piece of paper, and he says, I heard what they asked you yesterday. I wrote down a few names. And we looked at the list, and there were some great names on there. And but the Buckinghams jumped out because it was the one-word name. Other ones had longer kind of things. And also, there's a fountain in Chicago called Buckingham Fountain. It's in Grant Park. It's a landmark. And it's gigantic, and it turns colors at night. It's just a gorgeous piece of work. And so we said, well, there you go. We can keep our job by telling them we'll change our name to the Buckinghams. But we also know we're going to say this is why we did it, because we're a Chicago group, Buckingham Fountain. It'll work fine. And that they were fine. So we kept our jobs. We did the show for 14 episodes or so. And it was a big launch for us. And then people started to think we were maybe English, and only locally, because they didn't know who the Buckinghams were now. But it just started to work out. Later down the road, when we were recording artists, it was tough to shake the English tag that we had, because we did the Smothers Brothers show, and they thought we were English. And when we walked in, Tommy Smothers welcomed us and said, oh, it's so great. We love your music. We're so glad you could make it and be on the show. We said, well, thanks. We're fans of yours, too. And he said, well, wait a second. Where's your accents? And we said, well, we got Chicago accents. What do you mean? Where's our accent? And he said, no, but we thought you were English. And we built this set of Union Jacks, complete Union Jacks.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, well, look, we're doing 2 songs. There's another set where, it's not like that. So you can't change this. He was like panicking.
Yeah.
We got to change this. We got to change it. So we did one song. We did Mercy, Mercy with the English background. And we did Don't You Care with the plain background. Didn't designate any country. And that show kind of nailed it for us, because everybody thought we were English then when they saw us singing with the Union Jacks. And but we never pretended to be English, so it all worked out. The craziness of it went down pretty fast. But that was our big step. That WGN show, it changed our name, gave us visibility in 5 or 6 states, and it was kind of funny because we were greasers, so we had the hairdos and stuff. You could comb all that hair down and look like a beetle.
It's a lot of hair.
We had a lot of hair, It
was just the other way instead of,
and we were live. Yeah, instead of down here with bangs, we had the big old bouffant thing. And, but slowly we evolved on the show, though, to look a little bit more English. But they had us in gold tuxedo tops, with bow ties, and and we were singing live. We were playing and singing live, and that was a selling point, I think, that you could do that on TV. So yeah, that was our launching pad. That really opened up another path for us.
Were you very influenced by the British? Because then the Beatles had come here by '65, but and I guess it was in full glory at that point. Were they a big influence for you?
Oh, sure. Oh, gosh, yeah. It was brand new music, brand new instrumentation. I think one of the reasons that I was in an a cappella group before the band, and me and another singer were asked by this drummer who became the drummer of the Buckinghams. He started the group, John Polis, and he came to us and said, "Look, I play in a band." He said, "But we can hardly play music, but we can't sing at all." And he said, "So and all this stuff now with the Beatles, with them singing in their own band, it's getting a little tough to get people see that that's possible." So he said, "Would you two guys be our singers?" And we said, "Sure." We said, "Of course we will." And it was very funny because the band was horrible. And it was difficult to do shows with them because they could only learn so much.
Right.
And but then that evolved, and one guy would leave and another guy'd come in. So over about a year, we started to then find different players that were good just by doing shows someplace. You see in the band who stood out. So that's what we did. We planted the people in the band, and it was the Beatles that did that to us. There had to be that new kind of way to do it. And of course, we all fell in love with it. We fell in love with the guitar sounds and it's the different structures of songs they did, And, you remember the Beatles when their first album is all covers.
That's true. Most people forget that. That's true.
It's all covers. And so they rose just like we did from the curb right up to the top by continuing to evolve. And I think that was inspirational because as their music came out, we definitely we felt that something was changing and we better keep our eye on the target, So yeah, it was a good time. I mean, I think that the whole '60s was a great time to be on the road. Music was evolving every day. A new band every day, a new heavy push this way or that way or this. It was wonderful. So, and we were right in the middle of it, luckily. So it was a good thing.
You were big. You were big. I was, I was relatively young, but I was very into the 45s.
Yeah.
And I had kind of a drag that comes later. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about that. Was that the first big hit or was there something before that?
There were local regional hits. We did a James Brown song called I'll Go Crazy, which is on our first album that we did. And we did a couple of the covers. We did a Hollies cover on a couple of songs. And, we kind of did things that we really were attracted to. And anything with harmonies in it was really something we loved. But so those kind of like bubbled under, they were locally in the charts, the top 20 in Chicago.
You're still in Chicago at this point, yes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're still in Chicago. Yeah. And so that the same guy the DJ guy is the one who introduced us to the USA Records then, and said that these guys should have a deal. So they gave us a deal, and we recorded. Well, actually, recorded a couple of covers, and then we did. We got we did a show. Dick Clark had a show in town, and all the local bands were playing in the daytime, and at night the big acts would come in and play. So we had a really good showcase there, and there was a band there called the Mob, and we knew them. They were a local band in Chicago, a horn band. And they did a lot of R&B. They were really a good R&B band. And the guitar player, Jim Holvey, was there. And this guy, Carl Bonafetti, went up to him and said, look, you're a songwriter. You've been writing a lot of songs for your group. And he said, do you think you have anything for the Buckinghams? And he listened to us and he said, I do have a couple of songs that I probably wouldn't work for our band. He says, I'll make a little tape for you, So he went into the hotel and played his electric guitar with no amp into a little bitty tape recorder, a little bitty 3-inch reel-to-reel tape. And he gave us that tape. And on that tape was this song called Kind of a Drag. And so we took the song and we rehearsed it and we, got our hands on it and started, because it was very basic the way he gave it to us. And so we it's still the same song he wrote. And we changed it around, did it, and we used to play it live and people would really respond to it. There was a different kind of a sound to it. And, but then we kept telling the record company, look, you got to release this song. There's something special about it. When we listen to it, we get chills, and I said, there's something about it.
Yeah.
And they said,
when you have a winner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can feel it. And so even us, we were going, oh no, there's something about this song. Right. We're not just blowing our own horns here. This is weird. Right. And so the record company kept rejecting it, going, no, we're not going to release it as a single. And they kept releasing some of the covers and some of the other things. That was, it wasn't exactly a very creative label. But the guys, they wouldn't release it. So a whole year went by. The contract was up, and they had to release it. It was the last side. And they released it, and then they released us from the contract. So now they released the record with no promotion, except there was a local guy who picked up on it when he saw that it was released. Howard Bednow was his name, great guy. And he went to all the stations. And because we had local regional hits before, they were open to hearing our new records. And so once he brought that record, to the stations, the record company never promoted us. We were gone from them. We didn't have a record label. We had nothing. And that was like November of 66. And by February of 67, it was #1 with a bullet in Cashbox.
#1. I was going to ask you whether it reached #1. I wasn't sure, but I know it was a big, gigantic hit.
Yeah, it was
magical. When they used to say in the old days, that's just a great record. They used to, right? They used to say that in those terms, and that certainly applies in this case. That's for sure.
Well, it was pretty amazing the way it took off and what happened. So we were sitting there when our drummer came into rehearsal one day, and he threw out Cashbox magazine. He goes, "Oh no, you're not going to like this." And we went, "What?" And he opens it up, and there it is, Kind of a Drag with a bullet. #1, knocked the Monkees and the Stones out of 1 and 2.
Pretty good company right there.
Yeah. And we were sitting there going, but we have no record label. We have our record's #1. How did it get there if there's no record label?
Right.
So it was like pretty panicky right then. But then we regrouped, got a manager more nationally based, and he got us on Columbia Records. And Jim Hovey called right away, the songwriter, and said, "Hey, I've got another song for you." And that was Don't You Care.
Don't You Care, another great one. Also, Susan, one of my favorites.
So, yeah, he wrote Susan, Hey Baby, and Kind of a Drag. I mean, he wrote those songs about Susan. They're all about the girl that broke his heart. And they're great songs. We were blessed to be able to have a songwriter that was writing for us now. That was a great thing about it. And it's funny. So we laugh about it a lot. He goes,
and all of these songs was because this Susan broke his heart. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to the words,
with pain. You got to be in pain to create good art.
That's right. No pain, no gain. I told him. I said we had lunch not too long ago, and I said he was going, I wish I could have been with that girl longer. She was so sweet, and we had such a good time. But me being a late night musician, it didn't pan out over time. He said, and I said, Jim, I said, don't worry about it. I said, you got 4 major hit records that lasted 60 years. I said, that was the best thing in the world. You didn't need to have the relationship.
Right.
It would work better this way. And he bought me lunch. It was good. He thought that was right. So it was
And
good.
let's go, just for time, let's go to the 80s when Olivia Newton-John came into play, when you had those great duets with her. Talk about that era.
Oh, that was, well, the mid-70s is when I kind of stepped back from music a little bit, because there wasn't too much, there was no opportunities for a slow singer unless you started your own thing and stuff. And so I was just trying to step back a little bit and see what I'm going to do next. And so I started acting, and I started doing theater, and I did, and then I got an agent, and all of a sudden I started doing theater, and I did commercials, I did some TV, just small parts, but I was making a living. And then I was doing voice work as an actor also. So that kept my voice in shape. And I had to stay in pretty decent shape because I had to go out and audition, so, but while I was doing that, I got a call from my friend Tom Scott, the great jazz sax player from the LA Express days. And he said, look, I'm doing a tour with Olivia Newton-John, and I'm the musical director. It's going to be a great band. It's 3 months long. And we need a guy singer who could sing backgrounds with 2 other girls. But you get to do duets with her. And I said, I'm in. I said, what do I do? I had to go in and audition. And of course, I'm there with the band, and they said, okay, we're going to get started. And I said, okay. And all of a sudden the door opens and Olivia walks in, and I have to sing to her. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like, what am I going to do now? Now I'm sweating.
Uh-huh.
But, and it was the song Suddenly, the love song.
Right.
Which is, I'd rather start with something like You're the One That I Want.
Right. A little more upbeat.
Because the Suddenly is very intimate.
Yes.
And, but I knew a couple of the musicians, so I felt kind of comfortable. And she just was gorgeous. She walked in, just no makeup, nothing. It's like, I went, oh my God. So I just thought, wow, the way I feel about looking at her, I might as well hit on her while I'm singing. Right. And I did. I just used the song to be what the song says I was, And we did the audition. I was sweating like mad. And her director came out, and he said, look, he says, there's a couple other people that were coming in to audition. He said, what I just saw made me sweat. He says, I'm sure you're going to go on the tour with us. He said, the chemistry was awfully good.
Chemistry, you have it or you don't.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, maybe I think just making my choice about, I didn't care how I sounded. I just wanted to get the girl at the end,
That's all that counts. That's all that counts at the end, Dennis.
Yeah, that was it. So, I got the job, and we went out for 3 months and did that. And it was glorious. It was one of the highlights of my career, really, because she was great to work with. She was very, very, very professional, very, very, funny. Anything that I said in our duet rehearsals or did something different, she goes, okay, that stays in. That stays in. That was good. I like that.
She was improvisational, and she knew what worked and didn't work. That's a beautiful thing.
She was great. And she was very, very, she shared the stage when I worked with her,
It counts.
It was a treat. It was a real treat. It was like one of the most professional jobs I've had out there, and I had a good time. And I live today on YouTube in those 2 videos that they show from that concert. And people walk up to me today and go, oh my God.
But
you got the item?
I saw that video you're referring to. I also saw you, as a youngster way back when, and today. You know how some cats, they lose their voice and you don't know why? You maintain yours beautifully. And not because you're my guest, but because it's a fact. You sound fantastic these days. And and just because I have to, and I hate doing this because we have to go for part 2, maybe next week if you're free. I have another guest coming up. Otherwise, I'd talk to you for the full hour.
Okay, cool.
I want to know what's happening today and how can folks get in touch with you and find your music, so on and so forth.
Well, the best way to do it is on Facebook. It's all one word, Dennis Tufano Sings on Facebook. And you'll go right to my official page. And we have videos, photos, and the events, a listing of all the dates I'm doing. So it's really good to go there. And then, you could sign up and be in there and get the information all the time. So that's the best way to do it. There's also a website that another friend of mine does for me called Dennis Tufano Rocks, which is a website. That's .com. And so those are the best ways to find out where I'm at and what I'm doing or what I'm not doing. So I think that's about it, So yeah, let's continue.
Yeah, because we're just scratching the surface. We have to come back maybe next Friday if you're free, and I really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Ralph, man. I like Jim. Jim's a great guy.
Oh, and again, that Jim Petrecca has these great talents that God, if I had these phone numbers because of Jim Petrecca. I have your phone number because of Jim Petrecca. I'm going to keep that phone number forever now.
Okay. Well, thank you, man. Thank you very much for your interest in it all. And let's definitely hook up again and finish off.
Definitely. Thank you.
We have a lot of stories.
Okay.